Well, hello, fellow strugglers. This is Eric Bodorf, and I have a special treat for you today as we are talking with Brock Talon, former JW and author of a new book entitled Journey to God's House. Say hello, Brock.
Hello, everyone.
Hello to you, sir. Now, just so you know, we have flown Brock into the JWStruggle studios here this morning, and what a thrill it is for him to be here, I'm sure. No, actually, I'm kidding. There's no studios. We're talking with Brock on the phone from an undisclosed location. And really, the reason I'm being silly is, Brock, it's your fault. You had me in a joking mood, my friend, because your book is filled with jokes, it's filled with humorous stories, and I can't wait to talk to you about it. Those of you out there that are listening that don't know, this is a collection of Brock's stories. The book is a collection of his experiences, his impressions of life at the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses in Brooklyn, Bethel, in the 1980s, mid-1980s. So, first off, Brock, I'm going to stop talking and let you get in here. Tell us a little bit about your background in the Jehovah's Witnesses, if you could.
Sure. We were the only folks in our family that started studying when I was about 5. I remember my 6th birthday, and I mentioned that in the book, that by that time they were getting baptized and told me that my 6th birthday was the last one I'd ever have. And that they kept to that. So they came into the truth, and or the so-called truth, and I started with, probably with all your listeners have started with, finding out about all the things that the Jehovah's Witness religion was about. But interestingly enough, none of my other family came in except for my immediate family, and even that, one of my siblings didn't. And my father never progressed to pioneer or elder. My mother never did that either. No pioneering. No, she didn't even clean the Kingdom Hall. So it was kind of interesting that for my family, we never had very much status in the truth in any way, but they really demanded a lot out of me. So I ended up being the only one to pioneer and the only one going to Bethel, things like that. I guess I was kind of guilted into it, and I felt the way most witness youth, I think, feel: guilty, scared, worried about your future, struggling with feelings of growing up and liking the opposite sex and all that stuff. So I struggled and thought that Bethel would save me, and that's where my story starts in the book, that I went to Bethel.
Right, that's outstanding. So you were the overachiever, and I know you mentioned in the book that nobody thought that they would accept you to Bethel, and then lo and behold, you're at the assembly, and then you get this letter, and you show everybody, and they're all amazed, and
yeah.
All of a sudden you go from zero to hero because now everybody loves you because you're a Bethelite.
Yeah, that was strange. I was always a nobody in the truth, and even at Bethel, when I went there, I realized I was still a nobody, and I left a nobody. So my story is taken from the everybody, nobody, every man, nobody viewpoint. That so I don't have anything special to talk about like Ray France did or any of the others. Mine's just the everyday man kind of story.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the things that I think people are liking about the book. Now, let me ask you this, Brock. Why write a book? I mean, time has gone by. All these years has gone by, and then all of a sudden you just woke up one day and said, I'm going to write a book.
No. Actually, I faded about, I think it's 13 years ago, after I had a particularly tragic occurrence in my life that I won't tell the details about, and I was shown so much not love. I finally got fed up and faded. I moved to another congregation. I left with that congregation, my first congregation's blessing, and then I went to the new one far enough away that I'd have to change congregations. They didn't check up on me, and I just faded, and so nobody noticed for a long time until I guess the old congregation people started seeing me around town with facial hair. Then they figured it out, but by then I was gone, and I just folded myself into life, doing the things I wanted to do, pursuing the things in my career I wanted to do, pursuing romantic interest with the non-witness girls, and finally I found a wonderful one and was married. So I just kind of moved on with life, not really thinking about, being a Jehovah's Witness at all. I just wrote it off, and I was minding my own business, and it was probably 10 or so years afterwards, everything was going good, and then I stumbled upon the Jehovah's Witness network quite by mistake. That's a long story in and of itself. And I realized, wow, there's a lot of people out there that are hurting, and there's a lot of people out there struggling. You know, they need the JWStruggle YouTube channel. They need Jehovah's Witness network. So I thought, well, what can I offer? You know, all I got for me is my experience, and so I started telling Bethel stories. And I use humor to kind of take out the sting, because it wasn't always fun writing the story. It was actually quite hurtful. And that's why I use my pen name as well. I don't tell my real name, because I can just kind of be as blunt as I need to be and be open about it. And it felt good to do that. And what felt better was that everybody else was responding to it and saying it helped them. And so for the first time, I guess I was part of the ex-JW community where I could be of some use. Maybe I was more of use as an ex-JW than I was as a JW. I don't know. But they said, you should write a book. You should write a book. A lot of people personal messaged me, and I thought that was really sweet, but I didn't want to spend the time and effort and emotion to do it. So I just kept posting, and then I cut everything off my chest and thanked them, and I walked away for almost 2 years. But I started thinking about it, and I had another occurrence in my life that started me thinking about my mortality and things like that, and I thought, you know, I can't just not help other people in any way. I can't just forget about it. And if the only thing I can do is write a book, then that's what I'm going to do. So I went back to it with the aid of my wonderful wife, who herself is an author, and wrote the book, finished it. I actually had more than half a book already. I had to just compile those stories and make them, flesh them out, put them in order, give them context, and so on. And that's what I did. And I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, that is a brilliant kind of evolution of how it all came about. Thank you so much for sharing that. And a takeaway phrase you said is, for the first time in my life, I became a member of the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. You know, it's like a couple of years ago, you start writing some of these stories on JWStruggle.net. People are laughing. They're so funny. They're so outrageous. And of course, the truth is always stranger and funnier than fiction many times. And that was the case with these stories. And then you did it, and that's great. Now, let me follow up with this question. Tell us a little bit more about what's in the book. I mean, just tease us a little bit, if you can, with maybe just a couple little stories.
Well, I thought some themes that were overriding as a Bethelite were big to me as a young person, of course, is sex. I've been criticized for bringing that up, but let's face it, that's big in any world, and it was especially so for young witnesses. So I have a number of stories that revolve around either sex or romance, and some of the heartbreak I experienced and the struggles that I had as a young person with that. So I have one story called No Sex, I'll Drink to That, which is basically a diatribe against the fact that at Bethel you could drink yourself silly every weekend, but you couldn't relieve yourself of sexual pleasure, let's just say. So it was just, to me, a strange dichotomy, and so I write about that. I write about the dating world, which is always strange in the Jehovah's Witness community, and how and the hoops you have to jump through. And if you think it's restrictive as a JW, just try dating as a Bethelite. It's even more restrictive and strange. Not to mention the fact you're broke and you don't have any time to date. So it becomes difficult. So those are a couple of the themes. The denizens that are there, the people you run into. Let's face it, you were there, Eric. I mean, there's some really strange people, like Mr. Coffee. We were just laughing about before this. There's so many stories about people like that, and him in particular. I don't know if the rest of the JW community even know that we have people. We have people like that, colorful people. I also, met Michael Jackson, and so I put that in the book. I ran into a lot of the heavies there, governing body and committee members, people that write the Watchtower. And I just thought it might be interesting to see their perspective on things. And of course, all through it, I diffuse some of the tenseness with humor. because that's what I do in my real life anyway. So that's what I did in the book. So it's just kind of a story about how I got there, why I went, how I went in very naive, and how I came out the opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it resonated with me. I mean, not just because I was a Bethelite, I was there just a few years after you, but because these are stories that the witnesses can identify with, and it's another peek behind that curtain, of this place, this Shangri-La, this Bethel is supposed to be house of God, and everybody's supposed to be perfect there, and then you find out that it's not like that, and of course it is funny. It's funny as hell. There's a lot of parts where you're going to laugh out loud when you read it, and that is, like you said, there's just part of the way that you deal with it and cope with it, and life is funny. Life is funny, and it's not bitter. You don't have to write about the negatives. Your book doesn't come across as some angry, bitter, slanderous apostate at all. It's not like that. There's people there that you like too, right?
Yeah. We were just talking about that before the interview, that we both agree there were some really nice people. I don't harp on them too much because it doesn't make too much of a story to say, and this guy was cool, and that lady really treated me nice, and this person was really cool. But there are a lot of people there that were nice. Now, I didn't keep friends with them when I left, but they were nice to me, and so it wasn't filled with a bunch of monsters, and neither are the local Kingdom Halls. So there are plenty of nice people among Jehovah's Witnesses. I believe misguided now, but I believe that they're sincere and they're nice. But the overriding problem with it is that underlying all that is just a lack of love, and I think that's the bottom line. As I built to that is I won't give it away, of my feelings of why I eventually walked away. So it wasn't one epiphany. It was lots of little epiphanies that basically my JW career died at 1,000 deaths. Yeah, and I guess, basically what I'm getting from what you're saying is that that's what woke you up to the truth about the truth. It wasn't some doctrinal thing. I know you mentioned that to me earlier. It wasn't like, you realized that if they were wrong on 607 or something like that. It was the lack of love. I guess it just told you that deep in your mind or your conscience, you knew something wasn't right here. Yeah. I quote that in the book, that Jesus didn't say you would identify my disciples by the people who preached the most, or who had the most compelling doctrine. So I just think that God likes a mystery, and He makes us struggle and search, and that nobody really knows for sure any of it. I mean, we get pretty close and we believe, but I don't know if we can dogmatically claim anything 100% fact. I think we should strive for that and try to understand it, but we don't. So I wasn't moved by doctrine, frankly. I'm still not. So I attend church now, and I see the flaws in the people and maybe even in the doctrine, and I don't sweat it anymore, because I don't think any one religion has the total handle on what is the complete truth, and I think God wants us to question everything anyway. And that's the one thing, unhealthy thing about being a Jehovah's Witness, is you can't question anything. But the church I have now, I'll have friends that are deacons now, and they'll get up and talk about stuff, and if I question it right there in the sermon, they'll say, I don't know. I really don't. I'm not sure. And I love hearing that. I love hearing a man of God that studies and has conviction, but still say, I'm not really sure. Those are the kind of people that I cling to now, that are honest and say, well, I'm pretty sure, this is how I feel, and I can defend it, but I'm not going to be rabid about it.
Yeah, and then just being open-minded and having the freedom to believe the way you want to and follow your own conscience. And that may be the most pernicious thing that Jehovah's Witnesses, or I should say the Watchtower, has accomplished, is to control people's consciences and minds and not allow them to think for themselves.
Yeah, that's right. That's the wrong part of it. So the Bible says make sure of all things, and they quote that to you all the time as a witness, but they don't really want you to. So it's those kind of contradictions that start making sense, but only in retrospect. But I was raised as a little kid from 5, 6 years old up, and if you feel that way now, if you're listening to this interview, you can't help it. You've been told that way for all your life. And how do you overcome complete indoctrination and inculcation, even though it's well-meaning? So I totally understand it, and I get it. But for me, I walked away, and I never looked back. I was 100% convinced I did the right thing. I've never changed my mind or wavered on it. But I did have a lot of stuff and junk to get out. And, it's funny, when I was writing it, it was very emotional. I was sitting down and actually writing the book, very personal, maybe too much sharing. And my readers might be interested to know there were things I took out of the book. I put them down, and then I took them out. They were too personal, or they didn't make a point, or they might have sounded bitter, or whatever. And I thought, no, it's not helping with the story I want to tell. And that's just too much sharing, if you can believe that. And it was cathartic. So, it's very, very nice to write it down. It's different writing it down than talking about it. And there's something about writing it down and reading it over again. When it comes out and you actually say it and read it out loud, and it's there on paper, and I did print the book out before I ever published multiple times and read it, it's not as scary as it is when it's inside of your brain. Mm-hmm. So it's deep down inside, and then you get it out on paper, and it's like, wow, that's not so bad. Why did I worry about this for 30 years? So that's kind of what I went through. At least most of it. There's some stuff that it's pretty bad. So for that, I thought, no, I'm not gonna mention. This is not useful at all. So that's what I went through.
Yeah, if I can just interject that, I really appreciate you talking about how it made you feel, that you had this catharsis, that it was therapeutic for you, it was gratifying. And there's a lot of former witnesses and fading witnesses that do that. They write a long letter to their family members or to the elders, even if they never deliver that letter. It feels good to put that down on paper and reread it and see it and know, to kind of firm up in your own mind, what's going through your mind and how it has helped you to get that out. Let me ask you, Brock, would you encourage other current or former JWs to write their own story or write their own book? I mean, do you think that would be a good thing for more?
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you asked, because on my Facebook page, I made an entry that I think everybody has a book in them. I've read so many interesting stories on JWN and the JW recovery sites and so on. And, everybody has stories like I have in them. And everybody has experiences. I had one lady tell me she worked in the mental health site with Suicide Watch. I had no idea that even existed at Bethel. So there's so many of us that have so many interesting stories. I know there's a lot of repetitiveness, and we had a lot of commonality, but everybody has it. Now, I'm not saying everybody has a good book in them, or a book that a billion people want to read, or that everybody has the skill to write a book that will be publishable. But I mean, they have a book in them that they should write down to get it off their chest. And I think some of the vehicles like the blogs and online websites are play that purpose. At least that's what I've seen in the last couple of years that I've been looking at it. Before this time, I didn't pay attention to the ex-JW world at all. I had no clue it existed. I just went on with life, and I discovered it by accident. But now that it's there, I realize what a good value that it serves for people, and people like yourself that are out there helping others every day is very admirable. But you got to help yourself too, and I think writing it down is part of that help. Even if you, like you said, even if you never even send it to anybody or share it with another soul. I think there's always somebody that you're close to you can share with, though, a mate, a good friend, somebody. Mm-hmm. But if not, at least you got it down and wrote it on paper, and for some reason it just isn't as bad once you write it down, or it kind of takes the edge off of it.
Yeah, it's true. Now, I had another question I wanted to ask you about as far as you've done this book, you've kind of gotten a little bit more back into the ex-JW community. Do you have any future plans? I mean, what's next for Brock Talon, if anything?
I'm really not sure. I tend to focus on projects like for my work or for other things, do a flurry of activity, do the best I can, finish it, enjoy it for a small period of time, whatever that might be, and then move on. So it's entirely possible I don't do anything to follow this, because it was a lot of work for me emotionally, more so than just time. But I do have a regular work life and all that, like a lot of us do. So I didn't get a chance to devote a lot of time each day to it. So that's why it took so long.
Yeah,
I don't have any particular plans, although my wife is egging me on to do something, and I've had others give me ideas. And so I don't know. I don't want to say no like I did 2 years ago, and no, I'm not going to write a book, no, because I did that, and I ended up being wrong. I did write a book, so I don't want to do that again or try to act like a coy diva. If you ask me all enough, I'm gonna do it. I don't want to come off that way. I'm just not really sure. I've actually started a book on humor before I ever did this. Since my wife is an author and she's sit and write, I thought I'll sit and write with you. And I started a book long before there was a Talon, and I never finished it. I laughed about it, but it's kind of twisted, dark, weird humor, so I don't know if anybody else will care about it. But now that I've gone to the publishing part, maybe I'll do it. I don't know. So I don't have any real plans, but I do feel more tied into the ex-JW community now with all the feedback I've got, and
absolutely.
I think that we got to do something. I don't feel like now that I can just not do anything anymore. So I don't know what that's going to bring for me.
Yeah, and I mean, you certainly have advertised the book well. You made a trailer for it on YouTube. You've got your Facebook page. Do you have another website that you have to promote the book, or is it pretty much just go to Amazon or go to Facebook or?
No, you just go to Amazon.com and type in Journey to God's House or Brock Talon, and it'll come up. I have a flyer that I made up that can be passed around an email. Maybe I'll pass that one on to you, and you can somehow pass it out. I haven't advertised the book at all yet. I mean, if you don't count telling my JWN friends about it, and then I just recently contacted a couple other of the Jehovah's Witness recovery sites with the news of the book, the contact info, but I haven't gone and done anything else. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's probably next, is to somehow try to advertise it, and getting on JWStruggle doesn't hurt. I guess that would be my first official foray into some kind of advertisement for it.
I'm honored.
I don't know.
I'm honored that you would talk to me about it, and let me put this on the YouTube channel, because there's a lot of people that they want to know more. They want to know more about you, and obviously you have to be careful because you have faded and escaped the Watchtower unscathed as far as the shunning and all of that. So you have to keep that in.
Yeah, I still have a lot of folks I contact with. When I see them, it's pleasant. I can go to their house, even out of state, where I live, and it's not where I was raised. So when I go there, they're happy to see me, and they don't ask questions about, or what are you doing and stuff. We just talk about old times, and we leave it at that. And there's part of me doesn't want to hurt them. If I ever outed myself, my name, it would really hurt them. Even though I don't talk about them, but it would hurt them because they're JWs. And I have parents. Ironically, my dad, for example, hasn't been to a meeting, 20 years. He doesn't do anything anymore. But when I got married a number of years ago in a church, he actually shunned me. He refused to go to the church. He told one of my siblings that I should know better, and he judged me because I no longer practiced the religion he shoved down my throat that he himself has abandoned. So it's that kind of weird stuff that ex-JWs have to deal with that makes it why I don't really want to out myself anymore, because if he heard about this book, I think I would be disowned completely. Yeah.
It's amazing how many people are inactive or even disfellowshipped, and they're still mentally just as in as any other JW is. It's like your dad.
Why is that? I mean, they're nothing. I told that to my other part of my family, my mother and one of my siblings. What are you? I mean, you're nothing. You're not a Jehovah's Witness, but you're not anything else either. You believe in nothing. You have absolutely no faith. You don't have anything you're standing for. You know what you're standing against, Babylon the Great or birthdays, but why? You know, you're not recognized by Jehovah's Witnesses as anything. They wouldn't embrace you. So I don't get it. Either be in or be out, but I don't understand why you just float in nothingness for so long. It's hard. I didn't do that, so maybe there's a lot of listeners out here that are doing that. You know, ask yourself, why are you nothing? You know, either go back and make a run for it, or leave. But being halfway in between, where you don't do anything, you're afraid to live life because JWs told you couldn't go to college, or you can't celebrate a birthday, or silly. So I didn't do that. And once I was either in or I wasn't, and when I was out, I was out. But I still get judged by it. I know that. So there's part of not wanting to hurt people, part of that. There's another reason, though. I don't say my name. I said this to one of the few people who actually know who I am, and that is that the Brock Talon, the real guy, me, is flawed. I'm flawed now. I was flawed back then. If I put my name out there, there are always going to be people who say, "Oh, I remember that guy," and then and trash the book based on who I was, because I wasn't perfect myself. And I don't need that now, and I don't need it for the book. Mm-hmm. So Brock can stay kind of this mystery guy, and he doesn't have to be weighted down by all the rest of the history of me, because there's plenty of people out there, especially females, that would want to maybe get back at me. So I just thought, I don't want to mix up my life with the book, because I'm a flawed individual, and I've just seen other people use their real names and then they're immediately attacked for their flaws. And they were flawed. I mean, a lot of us in the witness world were flawed, especially as children. So of course, we have things that we could say about that. And I just thought that it would be a distraction to the book.
Makes sense. Well, look, Brock, I really appreciate you, bearing some of your soul here and talking about the book, talking about your background. I know there's a lot of folks out there that have wanted to know more about you, and now we do. Now they do. So I really appreciate it. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up, or?
No, likewise. Thank you for the opportunity, Eric. I really appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and I feel honored that you wanted this time with me.
It's fun and it's interesting. And again, the book Journey to God's House is a hoot, and anybody that's around witnesses or has an interest in Jehovah's Witnesses would be benefited by reading it. That's my opinion.
Thanks
you for coming up, Brock.
All right, thank you.
All right, hey, take care.
The order is rapidly fading, for the time